Awesome. So the current state of data science. Before even anything, I think there's a lot of buzzwords. I think there's a lot of words that are easily to get confused with each other. And to be completely honest, there's a lot of people even in industry, like at a job, that are still figuring out those buzzwords. But I generally do think that this Venn diagram of sorts is pretty accurate. So data science lives as this combination of tools. AI, think of AI like physics. It's like this big domain, right? So, and in it, you have a lot of things. Inside of it, machine learning is a specific tool set of AI. So like how Newton's laws of mechanics relates to physics, machine learning more or less relates to AI. And inside of machine learning, there's a specific type of machine learning called deep learning. That's a different topic, but it's just a more specialized version. Data science kind of spans all three, a piece of them, and then a little bit more. So it's more just the idea of you're getting data, you're running experiments, like, you can run different types of experiments. So think like scientific experiments where you have, you're trying to control for one thing and you're trying to assess the impacts of different variable. So there's that piece of data science. There's the accumulation of that data from those experiments. Then you have to clean it. So you have to pre-process those data. Then to make sense of any of it, you got to visualize along the way. So that means understanding different tools or different coding algorithms that you can use to visualize that data so you can understand it. Once you understand it, then you actually get into the modeling of it, the modeling of the data. That's where that's the only piece where you're actually applying a math algorithm to the data. And there's a bunch of different math algorithms. There's a bunch of different ways you could kind of extract that insight from the data. But the whole goal is to get the computer to understand the data well enough. So that way, if it sees something new, it is able to make an inference on it or understand it without you explicitly telling it to. So yeah, so there's all those, but there's one specific piece that I do want to talk about, which is the final part, which is communicating results. All these things, you can learn the math, you can learn the programming. I think that all of it's awesome. It's really interesting. I guarantee you, if you go down that journey, you'll find a life of just endless learning, and it really is incredible. But none of it really matters if you can't communicate those results properly to someone who cares about them or someone who can make some change from them. Typically, if you're doing this, it's a full-time job. You don't have the capacity to also take the results and then create change in the world. Usually you're giving those results to someone who has the power, has the position of authority to actually institute that change. Either that's a government official or it's a CEO or whatever. And that piece, usually those people at the end don't know the math. They don't know the coding. They don't care also. They just want to see what should I do? Or how can this help me help others better? So that's generally the current state of data science. Those buzzwords are still being figured out, but that's more or less where it's at right now, is people are trying to make that whole process, all those different skill sets, as efficient as possible. There's one topic though that I do want to highlight is Moore's law, which essentially states is like the number of transistors in a microchip doubles every 2 years, while also the cost of computers is being halved. What that more or less means is that it is becoming cheaper to store more and more data and to get more and more data. So I actually had a survey ready, but I really loved the chat. I loved how active it was. So I want us to take like just a minute and everyone just throw out in gigabytes, roughly, how much data do you think is generated each day? And for context, the PS4 has an internal hard drive storage of about 500 gigabytes. Okay, so PS4 has internal storage about 500 gigabytes. Each game is roughly 50 to 60 gigabytes, which means on the PS4, you can store maybe about 10 games. Okay, so that's context. I want you guys to just throw out guesses of how much data on you do you think is generally generated each day? Well, you can't give out the answer just yet, Anthony. Now they're cheating. Awesome. I love the big guesses. Great. All right, let's reveal the answer. So in the whole digital universe, there's about 2.7, what it's called zettabytes, which is 2.7 trillion gigabytes currently in the whole universe. But each day, about 2.5 billion gigabytes is generated. And that is according to a source from 2018. So we are 2 years past that. And each year it's accumulating more and more. I think all of us probably have a good guess as to why, though. It's your phone. Your phone is your biggest like reason for why this is the case, because as you can see in this chart, again from that study in 2018, CD about less than, like 0.5 gigabytes way back in 1985. 1995, the DVD about 1.5 gigabytes, Blu-ray disc about 25 gigabytes. 2003 is roughly when things started to change, and you see the cloud coming out. All the cloud really means is like a subscription model for data. So companies can pay as they want, depending on how much data they use. So if they, it really is a subscription model. So they can say like, oh, I only use this much, so I'll only pay for this much. So once that happened, everything skyrocketed. And then once the iPhone came out, things just keep on exponentially growing. So what you're seeing is every day, the amount of data that gets collected on you is insane. All the websites you access, all the different sites you go to for buying, shoes on Nike or whatever, or if you're just on TikTok or Facebook, all those things, they're all collecting an insane amount of data that you don't even realize. And I'm not just talking about, oh, how many views did this person get on a video? I mean, like, what phone are you using? Like, what memory? Like, if you sign in with Google to other websites, all those things come back to Google. So like all these things come back in accumulation too. So now the whole goal is making you feel like you're using a perfect product. And I don't mean that in like a bad way either. Like, you want to use a perfect product, right? Like, you want to use Google and be like, oh, wow, Maps works so incredibly well. The reason it works so incredibly well is because of that insane amount of data that gets collected on you. So that way they can create a personalized product for you. So that way, when you go to Google, they're just like, hey, around this time, you usually take this route. Well, why do you know that? You know that because you've used it enough times. They've collected so much data on you that they're able to use machine learning, use data science to say, typically this person around this time takes this trip. So keep that in mind. Whenever you use any digital software, any app, they're all collecting data on you. And if you're thinking that's potential privacy or ethics concerns, you are completely right. That is a whole different topic though. The only thing you need to focus on right now is that the digital ecosystem is insanely expansive and continually growing. And as you can see here, most of it is just in the last few years.